Alrighty, guys, and we are here with the writer of Here for Blood, James Roberts. Sir, thank you for joining us. Definitely, it's an honor to have you here. We love talking to writers, especially writers, directors are kind of our bread and butter when it comes to our interviews. And I mean, we are also aspiring filmmakers, so to kind of get into the minds of somebody who's made something just as honestly off the wall and delicious as Here for Blood is. By the time I think this goes out, we're not going to have a review up just yet, but this is going to be one of those films that I cannot wait to just recommend to people because it's a splatter fest. It is a fun concept, and I'm just going to kind of kick things off here by saying, where did the germ of this idea start from? Was there a moment that you kind of like sat back and said, I want to do like a kind of a possession splatter horror thing with a wrestler as a babysitter? Like, was that where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's I used to babysit these three little boys when I was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a bigger guy. I played rugby and football and stuff, and I just remember thinking like, hey, if somebody broke in right now, I think I could protect these guys. I remember just I was always a horror fan, so I always had horror scenarios going on in my head, and years later, I wrote a script for a producer. Um, and he gave me a really strict kind of set of guidelines. He needed to see the script written around, and I wrote it. It was not a good script. Nothing really happened with it, but it was the concept of this guy babysitting, and then the home invasion happens, and I just really wanted to inject a lot of my personality into it. So all the things I love to see in a horror movie, practical effects and wrestling. I was a pro wrestler on the independent circuit for a number of years up here in Canada. So I just kind of took everything I love about genre filmmaking and put it all into Here for Blood.
That's awesome. And so I guess now's as good a time as any to let you know that Luke is our wrestling aficionado. So I'm going to let him take this away because I know he's got some very
Excellent.
wrestling focused and horror focused questions for you. So take it away there, Luke.
Well, like one of the things as I was watching the film, and you always have these films that kind of inspire you. And looking at Here for Blood, I got kind of these tones of a mix of like Evil Dead. You have some even Mandy in there, and I think what really harkened back for me, I grew up, big wrestling fan, still am, but when you have this idea of this babysitter, it's like it was reminiscent of those early '90s, like Mr. Hulk Hogan's Mr. Nanny. So I was curious if there were any of those inspirations in terms of kind of taking little bits of those films, because I saw those intertwined and really meshed well.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. A lot of the inspiration are those practical effects splatter movies, whether it's Evil Dead or Return of the Living Dead. Our character's name is Tom O'Bannon, and I
Yep.
named him O'Bannon right after Dan O'Bannon. So I've always loved I guess the really fun over the top splatter films, and I just thought it was such a fun scenario to have. Like, what kid wouldn't want a pro wrestler to come over and babysit you? You know what I mean? Be like, oh, that'd be so cool. So I just really wanted to, um, incorporate. With the pro wrestling comes an inherent sense of over the top violence, and I just thought it was a really fun way to kind of set the tone with the audience and know like this isn't going to be disturbing violence. This isn't going to be really gritty, grounded in reality stuff like Saw films. I'm like, this is going to be over the top, borderline Looney Tunes violence, and it's going to be fun. And that's what I thought was a nice a kind of way to kind of warm up the audience to that notion is having the character be a pro wrestler is a really great way. Um, a to have all the violence ensue, but then B in a really fun way that I love.
Yeah, and I agree with you there that it is definitely kind of that Looney Tunes esque style violence that like Luke said, like the Evil Dead 2 definitely is one of those things where I could feel that energy. Return of the Living Dead is a perfect comparison as well because like And that's actually was going to be one of my questions, is if Tom O'Bannon was named from Dan O'Bannon, just because it's like I could catch that, and then obviously you see it in the trailer, so not a spoiler, guys, but the skull that talks and stuff. Like I'm like, this is very Return of the Living Dead vibes, and the glowing eyes were another thing that I really loved. That I love the kind of essence of kind of tackling that kind of 80s style. It seems like visually that's where a lot of this kind of pulls its DNA from. Like I think of films like, I know not a wrestler or a horror movie, but Adventures in Babysitting comes to mind a little bit there, where it's kind of got that 80s tone to it. And, with the color palette. So I assume that was probably very intentional. And was that something that was important to you when it came from, taking it from the page to screen, when it came to finding the right director and the cast to be like, I need you guys to like, I want this style, this feel to be emulated? Or were you kind of just letting them run with it and see what they came with?
No, I was very hands-on through the whole process. I was a producer on the film, so I had a
Mm-hmm.
hand in casting. I was very involved in editing. My good friend Thomas Vickers was the editor of our film, so we've been friends for years, and we have a really good shorthand. So he knows my sense of humor. He knows, the pacing and of my writing and what I would envision. You know what I mean? As I'm writing it. So um, it was everybody got what I was going for from the get go. It was very easy to communicate, what the tone was, what the intention was of the story, and the biggest thing was casting. Finding the right people to kind of bring these characters to life. Especially the lead character Tom. You need a guy who's built like a pro wrestler, who can act, who has a charisma, who can play those. He's kicking ass, but he's also got like a bit of a soft side. You know what I mean? He's looking after the little kids, so that's not an easy find. And when we found Sean Roberts, we were like so lucky that he was willing to do our movie.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun. I seriously, I said it to Alex, the guy who kind of heads up everything publicity side for Screenbox. I said to him earlier today that I'm like, I could really see Tom O'Bannon's character being thrust into these little mini adventures. I thought his charisma and everything was just the main crown jewel of this film for me.
Yeah,
And I
agree.
thought that was honestly perfect casting for somebody who, honestly, I had only really remembered him from the Resident Evil movies growing up. And then X-Men, surprisingly. I remember
Yeah,
him being in the first X-Men in a very bit part. So it was like that face was so familiar. And like to see him come out and just like really take this role, I was like, dude, I want to see this guy be like, and I'm sorry for all the Evil Dead references, it's one of my all-time favorites, but like him be like this Ash Williams type who keeps getting caught up in these cult-like
yeah.
scenarios. Honestly, I've had Bigfoot on the brain, so I was like, I want to see Tom O'Bannon fight Bigfoot. I want
Fight
to see him
Bigfoot.
go head to head with Bigfoot.
That'd be a blast.
Oh, absolutely. But Luke, before I get on my tangent about cryptids and Ash, why don't you take it away with your next question there?
Absolutely. I just wanted to mention, because Dylan mentioned Ash, but, for me, of course, playing in the pro wrestling space and They Live being one of my all-time favorite films, I really got that kind of Roddy Piper, John Nada feel to it, and
Yeah.
it was just like Sean Roberts, being that driving force of, having that charisma, but playing with so many different characters. And I think you kind of melded, you have the action, you have comedy, you have the horror all spruced in there. And now when you're going in and you're writing everything, is that something where are you mindful of that, where it's like, I'm writing a horror film, so I have the horror elements, I've kind of found my way into action, so I have to kind of come back and put in more horror elements? Or is it just more so like you just write what feels natural and then you kind of go back and you kind of edit a little bit to maybe we can take this out, maybe add a little extra here? Or is it just kind of you stare at the blank page, you type what you see, and then you kind of just go with it?
Yeah, I think the aspect I was most mindful of was keeping the relationship between Tom and Grace, the girl he's babysitting, the character, keeping their relationship growing and kind of giving them nice little moments in the midst of all this chaos. Like something as simple as there's a scene where Tom's wounded and she offers to go get him a beer out of the fridge. Like, like she goes to get him a drink, and like just these little things. Like, so the action, the horror. Um, are like the set pieces I'm working towards, but I was more mindful of not losing those smaller little character moments in between it all to keep to kind of build that bond between them and hopefully with the audience as well. They kind of start rooting. They're with them. They're rooting for them, and they're growing more attached to them just as they are growing more attached to each other as they progress through the film and go through more and more of those action or horror set pieces.
And then, because you created such an expansive lore here, especially, in the back half, we really get into it. Is there anything in there where that you looked at and were like, that maybe didn't make it to the actual, got lost from the page to the actual film itself, where it's like maybe budget wise, anything like that, where it was, I really wanted to do this, but we just didn't have time, or it wasn't in the budget to make something like that? Because there's a lot of great stuff in here and a lot of great lore. So, I mean, injecting that idea of a satanic cult can really make your mind play. So it's like, I wasn't sure if there were any extra scenes that maybe didn't make it into the film that you had to leave on the page that maybe we could see in a sequel.
Yeah, there's some dialogue and stuff just for pacing and time. We had to kind of pull back on a bit, but it's such a bizarre kind of this religion of these kind of ancient gods these people worship. It allows you to play. People don't stay dead, and it really plays on this really fun. Especially in horror movies, sometimes the killer comes back and it doesn't make sense why there's how did this character, rise from the dead again? It's like, well, we have an ancient mystical cult, and there's if there were a sequel, I'm sure we'd find there were branches all over the place in these little clusters of these, in terms of a bigger spider web of them. So, I mean, there's definitely room to grow and explore the lore and stuff. But yes, that remains to be seen if anybody cares to see a sequel.
I can definitely say that I do. And again, going back to please take my idea. I want to see him fight Bigfoot or a werewolf. I want to see him fight this big hulking imposing beast, because like that's kind of where not to get into spoiler territory. I that's where I kind of thought we were going towards the end there, but when it kind of held, it pulled back a little bit. I appreciated that because it does leave that air of mystery to it. And you talk about it having kind of this complex lore as to what exactly the gods are that these cult worshippers are going after, and they want to transcend and everything. And I think that that's something that I kind of appreciate about the way the film is written, is that it's there, and if you are interested in it, you can kind of pay attention to the things in the background, like looking at the things all up in the attic and the crawl space and everything. But I appreciate that you never try to dive too deeply into it. And
Yeah,
it's more focused on that relationship between our three leads, essentially. And I think that that's something really special that I want to touch on was so I really actually love the kind of dynamic between Tom, Grace, and Phoebe. I think like that you guys really that's the money of this entire film, is the fact that they all just feel so natural, and so like they have this great chemistry together. um was that something that like you guys did you kind of like cast somebody, like say you cast Sean Roberts, and then you went and cast Maya, and then did you kind of have to like use them while you were casting the other roles to make sure that the chemistry was there? Or was it just kind of luck of the draw and you guys just were like, I like this person, and they just meshed really well?
yeah, we were really fortunate with the actors we got for the film. we had some really tremendous people audition. And the biggest concerns for us were, yeah, finding the right lead for Tom, and then finding the right actor, especially for a child actor to play Grace. You don't want the kid to become annoying to the audience.
Hmm.
You don't want them to become like, oh my god, I wish they'd die. And that can happen really easily. But we were fortunate, with Maya. She had a natural charm, and it really comes through in the film. And she was like such a trooper. All night shoots, we did all night shoots. She'd be up till like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. Never complained. Never like just she was a total pro. And then the same with Joelle. Joelle was so uh, just charming and likable. Like there was nothing, and she's like that in real life. There's no pretentiousness to her. There's no you know ego there. So everybody just um, really fit into these characters, and a lot of it's just their natural charisma as actors coming through. Because it's not exactly Oscar nominated characters, right? There's nothing too difficult as an actor to really dig into, as far as their characters go. But it is a natural. They have to have something natural and charming and charismatic, or else it would fall apart. And I think we really lucked out with the three of them and the entire cast, but particularly their chemistry, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely the heart and soul of the film for me. And I mean, it's it's a pretty easy sell, I think, for a lot of horror fans. But when you talk about kind of the concept we're dealing with here of like having a pro wrestler who's fighting these cultists, and like it's a splatter film, but like to really, again, that's the thing that elevated this movie for me, was that it had such heart to it, and it does have that chemistry. And you're right, nothing's worse than having an annoying child or somebody who's just like really poorly written in the sense of they're just there to annoy us. But
Yeah,
no, like Grace is very much there's a lot of growth with her character as just kind of being this kid who's just kind of not paying attention, and then she really has to get her hands dirty, literally and figuratively.
yeah,
And it's one of those things where it's like I really appreciated that. And yeah, I think that definitely in the character department, I don't really think there's anybody here who suffers, and that's something that I detail in my notes for my review. Well, I guess literally somebody suffers, which is the actor Jesse Buck. Holy crap!
yeah,
Like
yeah,
what a commitment that was, just to have him getting torn up. And I gotta say, where this is leading to is my next question, is like the folks over, I think it was Butcher Shop Effects.
yep. Hmm.
Yeah, they really did a bang up job with the gore and everything. Was there ever a moment in this film where you were like in pre-production, you were worried that like, are we going to be able to pull some of these gore scenes off, or are we going to have to fall back on CGI, or were you guys pretty confident once you got involved with them that they were going to be able to pull it all off?
Yeah, we were pretty confident with them. We walked through everything. They're good friends with my co-producer Jacob Windat, so there's a relationship there before the film. So we had, we go down to their shop, which is this incredible space full of creature suits and prosthetics and gore effects. And, like we'd have a beer with those guys and we'd go through it and be like, okay, here's what I was thinking. We could do it this way, or we could maybe do it this way. What if you tried it this way? And they'd give really great suggestions and feedback. And, we were going for it all. Now on the night, sometimes you have one of something due to budget, and you got to
Yeah.
go. All right, we got to get it in one shot, and you don't know which way the blood's going to shoot, or which way it's sort of unpredictable. But we were really really lucky to have that team, and they did a really great job, and especially with Jesse Buck's makeup. Jesse Buck was kind of the I've been describing as the Wile E. Coyote of the movie, where like he keeps
Seriously.
getting like hurt and then coming back. And Jesse's an incredible actor. He's on tour right now with Cirque du Soleil. He's a Cirque du Soleil clown. He's a legitimate clown who's worked with them before, and like he's just when he showed up in our auditions, because we kind of described that character as like an evil Buster Keaton or an evil Charlie Chaplin, like the silent film star,
Yeah, no.
you know. And like you couldn't have found a better guy. Like it's a professionally trained Cirque du Soleil clown with such an expressive face and such a unique physicality that we were so like he was and a joy to work with. Everybody was, but yeah, Jesse really went all in on it.
Yeah, Wile E. Coyote is a perfect example for that character there. But Luke, I don't want to hog too much more of the time. You go right on ahead there with your next question, sir.
So me and Dylan, we do the podcasting thing. Our heart lies in filmmaking. So a lot of the time we kind of divvy up the work where I really love screenwriting and Dylan loves the shooting aspect of everything. So, seeing something on the page and then seeing these actors breathe life into it and see these scenes that, you've sat behind a computer desk by yourself, just kind of writing these scenes out. And it's all theoretical until you actually see it in front of you. And, I know we're not getting too deep into spoilers or anything, so you feel free to keep it as vague as possible. What was like one of those scenes or a few scenes or anything dialogue wise, anything like that kind of gave you those warm and fuzzies where you're watching this and you're like, man, I can't believe this has actually come to fruition and I'm actually watching my brainchild here on screen?
One of those moments was when everybody was doing their wardrobe test and we were doing the photos, and then you're looking through it and you're just like seeing these characters that have been living in your head for so long, and you're just like, holy smokes, and you're looking at the test makeup and you're looking at all these things. That was the most exciting. When it came to the actual filmmaking, we were shooting during COVID, and it was nerve wracking because if anybody got sick, we have to shut down. When I'm working, on a low budget film, I was driving people back and forth to set, and I'm making sure everybody shows up on time, and I'm worried about this. If this department's got an issue, I got to tackle these problems. So, um, well, I did have little moments here and there of appreciating it. It was definitely when I got to sit with an audience and those initial nerves. You're always nervous when you sit with an
Oh
audience
yeah.
because you're like, oh boy, they could hate this, and it could, just dead silence, the whole movie. But once the audience was getting into it and they were cheering, they're yelling at the screen and they're booing and all this fun stuff. That's when I was really like, okay, this is pretty cool. This is really fun.
No, I love that. Yeah, we shot a short film over the summer and actually got to do a local film festival here, and that was my heart was beating out of my chest sitting there just like,
Yeah.
oh man, it's gonna be terrible, like people are gonna hate it. And we had the best reaction, someone just being like, don't go up near that. It's like, the classic, someone yelling at them,
Yeah.
don't get close to that. And like that's when the anxiety kind of subsided and stuff. And
Yeah.
I genuinely have a hard time seeing anybody really not enjoying themselves while watching this, because like I said, it's a film with a lot of heart, and I really think that a lot of that comes to, it's kind of one of those things that it's said a lot more now. I think it's pretty common knowledge that the wrestling scene and the horror scene have so much crossover appeal when it comes to the
Mhm.
fans and everything. I mean, you and Luke are both living proof of that. But it's one of those things to me where I was curious, and I did not actually know. I failed in my research to find out that you were an independent wrestler. So it's one of those things where, um, I guess, what was growing up? Were you more on the side of being a wrestling fan, or were you more on the side of being a horror fan and then kind of picked up your love for the other? When did the transition happen, or was it always, you were a fan of both?
Always a fan of both. Um, it's funny because I'm like trying to think. Did I like one more? I probably watched horror more because I could just pick up a VHS and put it in whenever, and then wrestling I'd have to wait for it to broadcast on television or whatever. Um, but I'd watch wrestling with my dad as a kid, and we'd watch Bret Hart, and we'd watch. We're Canadian, so we're Team Bret up here. Yeah, and we watched. Roddy Piper was a huge influence in my life. So I really have great memories of. Watching these larger than life figures as a kid, and then as I got a little older, my buddy and I just marathoning every horror movie we could get our hot little hands on, and just like we were like, we gotta watch. What about this? Have you seen any of the Hellraisers? No, and we'd get them all and just watch those as many as we could, and became an obsession. And I've been writing, and the opportunity came up to train some pro wrestling. I absolutely had to do it. Gave me a whole different um, appreciation and understanding for the pro wrestling industry. Just how, what these guys go through, and you always know it's tough, but like, my goodness, like sometimes the simplest thing can feel like you got hit by a truck, and it's like they do it night after night after night, and yeah, it's just this movie's got a lot of things I love in it, and I hope it finds that fan base, and they see that, and they reciprocate.
Absolutely. Luke, go ahead and take it away with your next one there, bud.
Just I guess fantasy booking, if you will, here. Sean Roberts did a fantastic job. I think, you couldn't find a better actor to do it. As we look at the film, a lot of pro wrestling references already. I was already sold when we said pro wrestling in it. If I wasn't, as soon as Tyson Dukes pops up at the very beginning, oh my gosh, I could not believe he actually made an appearance in this film. But
Yeah.
just a little bit of fantasy booking. If this film, because it feels like an 80s film. And so if this had taken place in the 80s and you had your pick of any big pro wrestler that could star in this film, who would be your fantasy casting?
Well, I'd be hard pressed not to pick Roddy, but if I also think I would love to see Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig in that role. So I think that that'd be a ton of fun as well, because he was another guy I absolutely adored, and I think he's one of the most underrated in-ring talents out of that era. So I think those would be my two guys, definitely that I'd go with.
Absolutely. I think, Kurt Hennig has that natural charisma that's not necessarily over the top. So I think he would meld so well for me, because I was like looking at this and I was like, my head again went to Roddy Piper as well. And so I was kind of like playing that space to be like, who would work well, barring acting skills. I would love to see someone like a Dusty Rhodes just to tackle this idea, or just for the plain dynamic of just watching a child would be Macho Man Randy Savage. Just that
Oh,
guy
wow.
being
That would have been
wild
amazing.
would have been just crazy, because again, this lends itself to be such an 80s film. Like I could see this having that Scream Factory release where it's just like, you turn this on and it inspires creativity. And just one of my questions, you being a writer, what is your writing process in terms of when you're tackling a film? Do you tackle multiple ideas at once, or is it something where, I'm writing here for blood, I'm zeroing in, I'm focusing on this one, and then do you kind of go by a page count daily where it's like I need to hit 10 pages, or you just kind of write some scenes and feel how it is at the end of the day?
Yeah, I pick a main focus for a script, and I work on it. But if I have an idea and I need to write it down, I will absolutely do that. I will absolutely write. If I have 5 pages of an idea I need to write down, I will do that. And so I have it. So, if I want to come back to it, I can. So I'm not opposed to just like, no, don't think of anything else. Because, as creative people, you have these ideas pop in, and sometimes they're terrible and they don't pan out. But sometimes, I might go, oh, I wrote that down a while ago, and that might actually work in this one. So now I have a whole nother scene that changes the whole dynamic. So like, I think it's important to do indulge those uh, creative whimsies as they come in, and not just solely focus. And then in terms of a page count, um, no, I don't really focus on that as much. I do a lot of writing without writing, if that makes sense. I do a lot of you know certain ideas or adjustments or something like that will come to me as I'm writing, and I'll go, you know what? If I have this character do this, that makes this a little more meaningful and gives them an extra dimension. So I just really focus on crafting a good story, and I don't necessarily try to uh, force it or grind through. There are times where you certainly need to. Just if you're stuck, you might need to go just grind through. But um, I kind of trust in basically my most important thing is making sure that the story is how I like it, and I don't like to rush through that process. I think I wish if some more people took a little more time to develop story, and I let that happen. I don't fight that process. If I need a little extra time and I write one page or I write half a page because I need to go back and fix something to make a moment more impactful, I'll do that for sure.
No, that's so smart. And I subscribe to that method myself, because even though Luke is the main writer out of the two of us, it's like I tend to germinate a lot of ideas, and some of those ideas go into, I'll send Luke a multi-page treatment of just like, here's everything that I think. Now, you take it and run with it. And then some ideas are, here's a couple of sentences I thought of. And it's just like, you got to write that stuff down. And as a creative, it's like, I can't help but I do most of my stuff in Google Docs. I don't know how. I know some people are partial to paper or whatever, but I cannot help but, like, at least once or twice a day, I'm sitting down and I'm opening up a new page on Google Docs, and I'm like, here's this and that, like, let's see where this goes. And
Yeah.
then I'm going back 6 months later and pulling things out. And I think, like, the way that you just described that is very similar to how, like, Jordan Peele talks about his writing style of just following the fun. It's like,
Mhm.
if you have something that you're hot on right now, follow that, because you can always reincorporate it later. And I think that's smart. And I agree with you that story is definitely a huge focus, and people need to focus more on just developing that. And I guess that leaves me with, we're about to wrap up here, but my final question for you there, James, and then I'll give Luke one more, is what's on the horizon for you? Do you have any other horror properties potentially popping up that you can speak on, or are you going for a completely different genre?
I am a horror guy through and through, so
What I like
I'm
to
working
hear.
on I'm working on a script right now that I really like. I feel like the story and the characters are working, so I'm really moving forward through that and kind of getting it ready to potentially go out and try to show around. In terms of some people have been asking me, are you gonna do the sequel to Here for Blood? Yeah, if people want to see it, you know what I mean. If they do, I'd love to jump back in. I've got ideas of where it can go, and um, yeah. I'm just you know, I'm in the middle of a really exciting point in time for an independent filmmaker where we finished this thing and it's going to come out.
Hmm.
That's not easy, and that's
No,
not
not at all.
always the case. So we had a lot of luck and a lot of hard work, and I'm just feeling very grateful and thank you for having me on your show. This is exciting for me to talk shop with you guys about all the stuff I talk about anyway with my friends, horror and wrestling and stuff. So, I have stuff I'd like to do. I'm waiting to see how Here for Blood lands, and if people like it and they want to see more, that would be fantastic. But yeah, I guess I'm just playing it by ear and seeing what opportunities come my way.
Perfect, man. Yeah. And Luke, do you have any final questions there for James?
Just one. Looking at it as writing. I always have these films that kind of inspire creativity. Like my best comparisons, Alien and Aliens, where I can watch Alien when I want to watch a great film. I watch Aliens when I want to be inspired to write. Do you have a particular film or just a handful of films that you want to, when you're want to get in the creative space, you want to sit behind a computer and you want to write out certain scenes and you want to try to get your mind going? Is there any particular films that you like to put on to kind of inspire that creativity?
Yeah, I think I have three that I love to put on. I love From Dusk Till Dawn is one of my
Beautiful.
all-time favorite movies. Tremors
Great. Yep.
and I have more now. I'm thinking about it. Well, I'll put on Scream because Scream's one of those movies that's like comfort food that I watched at a young age and I just absolutely love it. But also like Fright Night, The Lost Boys, the usual fare. Reanimator, I can always put on, but I definitely say From Dusk Till Dawn, Tremors, and Scream are ones that I keep in my rotation more.
Geez, James, you were speaking our language with all those
Ah,
titles, man. Like, that is
amazing.
that is something we're always tossing around. Luke's a huge Fright Night guy. We're both huge
Oh,
Tremors
love it.
fans. I gotta
Mhm.
ask then, real quick. Sorry. How do you feel about Tremors 2?
You know what? I really like it. I know it's
Perfect.
but I love Fred Ward. I'm
Oh,
so
love him.
glad he got his own feature.
Right?
There's so It's got a pretty good soundtrack. You know what I mean? I love I love I love it. I love it in all its cheesy glory. I think it's a fun and a fun ride, and the fact that Earl Bassett got his own
His own
adventure film
adventure.
is
I love it.
I love it. It makes me happy as a fan, so I absolutely love it.
It's one of those rare sequels that's just like, you can throw it on and it is that comfort food like you were talking about
Yeah,
with
it
Scream.
is.
It's one of those ones where it's
Yeah.
like it takes me back to just being a little kid, having my Tremors attack pack, just throwing it on, and
Yeah.
I was just playing with action figures and having those movies on repeat in the background. But
Yeah.
James, don't go anywhere right away. I'm gonna wrap this up though real quick. But thank you for coming on with us, and yeah, definitely we're excited to see what more you can do for us in the future after Here for Blood, because definitely got something special there that you're cooking.
Oh, thank
Oh,
you guys. Thank you for your time and for having me on. This has been a blast.